Nate hadn't been manager for long when he decided to upend everything at the office. His first move was brutal: slash salaries, everyone's but his own. Greedy as ever, he cut pay across almost the entire staff. Resignation letters piled up the same day. Nearly half the team walked out, and those who stayed only did so because they had no immediate alternatives. They didn't fear quitting, they just couldn't do it yet. So, they endured the antics of a petty tyrant. With so many gone, Nate explained that several roles had been useless and repetitive anyway. The survivors were handed twice the workload. Nights stretched late. Even the janitor, who hadn't been earning much to begin with, finally gave up and quit. The biggest headache now was replacing her with pennies. No one wanted to mop floors all day, scrub sinks, and polish door handles to a shine for that kind of pay. Every day, the HR manager, Mrs. Bennett, tried to persuade Nate to raise the janitor's wage even a little. She told him flatly that at that rate, no one decent would accept the job. He refused. So each morning, during the staff meeting, Nate would gripe about dust, coffee rings, and the general filth as if the mess had appeared out of thin air. And to be fair, the office was getting grimy. One morning, he tore through every complaint he could think of, nitpicking the tiniest issues while people stared in disbelief. This branch had run smoothly before he arrived. After rushing through the weekly reports, Nate pivoted to the janitor vacancy. "If you don't find someone soon," he barked at Mrs. Bennett, "I'll add cleaning to your direct duties." At her age, swapping jobs wasn't easy. She'd have run from this cost-cutting zealot if she could, but she needed the position. So whenever he brought it up, she sat tight, lips pressed, took his unreasonable demands, and later in her office, washed them down with anti-anxiety pills. At the next morning meeting, Nate repeated his dissatisfaction. "Is it really that hard to find a cleaner? We're a successful, stable company. People should be lining up," he snapped, drifting toward the window. He paused and stared outside, eyes focusing on something near the dumpsters. A woman in threadbare clothes was stacking flattened cardboard with meticulous care. A sly smile crept across his face. He turned to Mrs. Bennett. "So you're telling me no one wants the job at our rate? Watch and learn, rookies." He flung the window open, the warm air rolled in. "Hey, come here a minute, I've got an offer you'll want to hear," he shouted. The woman didn't even flinch. She kept sorting the boxes, steady and absorbed. Surprised but excited by his own idea, he tried again. "You need cash? Get over here. Still nothing." Irritated, he ordered Mrs. Bennett to fetch security. A guard hustled into the conference room. "Bring that bum from the dumpsters up here ASAP," Nate said, jerking his chin toward the lot. A few minutes later, the woman stepped into the office. After several failed attempts to speak with her, it became clear she was deaf. She wore a hearing aid, but it either didn't work well or was a cheap device. Up close, though, she wasn't what Nate expected. She looked around 30, and despite her worn clothing, she was neat. Her hands were clean. Her clothes and hair were tidy. With no makeup, her face looked even younger. Her hair was combed and secured in a bun. The outfit didn't fit her perfectly, but it was laundered and free of odor. Remembering that deaf people often read lips, Nate slowed his mouth, shaping each syllable. "Do you understand me?" The woman nodded. "Do you want a job?" Not much to do. "Clean the office?" he finished. She stood quietly for a minute, eyes traveling across the room, taking in the scuffed baseboards, the smudged glass, the crumbs on the conference table. Then she nodded. Yes. Nate threw his shoulders back like he'd won a prize. He turned to Mrs. Bennett, who had watched in silence. "Can't find a cleaning lady?" "Maybe you forgot how to hire," he sneered. "Here's a lesson. That worthless person is ready to work for even less. Before you finalize anything, maybe cut the wage a little more?" Mrs. Bennett's look stopped him. Even he could see his push for yet another cut would send the woman straight back out the door. He dropped it. The deaf woman started the next day. Her name was Lauren. She arrived on time, often before dawn, and set to work with quiet diligence. She mopped, scrubbed, dusted, wiped, and polished. Within a week, the office was transformed. Glass gleamed, floors reflected overhead lights, and the sour smell of neglect was gone. But immaculate surfaces didn't soften the team's attitude. Some co-workers targeted Lauren for cruel, teasing jokes, smirking because they believed she couldn't hear. Her hearing aid was outdated and weak, but she caught more than they realized. A few of the nastier comments reached her anyway. Snickers about her clothes, whispers about where she slept, mockery of her careful, methodical pace. Lauren had endured worse. She kept her composure, eyes down, hands steady, working through the noise. Each evening she looked forward to slipping away to the edge of town, where she lived in a weathered, abandoned shack that she'd made into a small, stubborn refuge. She wasn't alone there. Over time, she had taken in strays nobody else would keep. 3 kittens tumbled over a mother cat that watched her with slow blinks. 2 loyal dogs thumped their tails against the creaky floorboards. On a perch by the window sat a small parrot with a crooked leg, rescued from a market stall where no one wanted an imperfect bird. They were her family now, soft muzzles and warm paws in place of conversation. Their needs were simple and constant: food, clean water, a safe corner to sleep. She was willing to absorb every jab at work, every rolled eye and whispered insult, to keep kibble in their bowls and blankets dry under their bellies. Back at the office, Lauren's routine never faltered. She disinfected doorknobs until they shone, lined up mugs in the break room, emptied bins no one else bothered to tie off, and wiped the whiteboards free of ghosted marker. She learned the rhythms of the place: the engineer who spilled sugar, the sales rep who never rinsed his spoon, the designer who trailed eraser crumbs, the manager who left fingerprints on glass partitions. She cleaned each trace without fanfare. Nate, of course, kept boasting about his smart hire. He made a show of scolding anyone who dared complain about the office, pretending the cleanliness proved his leadership worked. He never admitted that none of it would have been necessary if his cuts hadn't hollowed the place out. He still refused to restore pay or lighten workloads. He still frowned at every request for a new sponge. The others watched him strut, their patience thinning but bound by rent and bills. Mrs. Bennet, pale and tired, pressed on with her daily duties, protecting what dignity she could. And Lauren, with quiet, stubborn grace, polished the mess his decisions left behind until the light came back into the rooms, even if it hadn't yet returned to the people who worked there. At night, Lauren might prepare only a small meal for herself, but she always made sure her furry friends had something good to eat. Their eager eyes and affectionate nuzzles were enough to lift the weight of a hard day's labor. Mrs. Bennet, at least, was grateful. She admired how spotless Lauren kept the office, even though co-workers still mocked her behind her back. Nate, on the other hand, refused to be impressed. He couldn't say what he wanted from her, but over time, her quiet presence and intelligent gaze began to earn respect. The same colleagues who once laughed at her started to realize she wasn't the simple beggar they had assumed. Though she spoke little, her words carried weight. When she did share her thoughts, they were sharp and insightful, often surprising her co-workers. It became clear that her circumstances didn't reflect her intelligence. She knew more than she let on, and people began to sense it. Meanwhile, the office atmosphere grew heavy. Every morning, Nate's temper set the tone. He blamed others for the branch's declining performance, though it was his reckless decisions causing the downturn. His bitterness deepened as profits fell. Employees were fired in waves, sometimes multiple at once, adding to the fear and uncertainty. Rumors spread that before long, Nate would be the only one left. The company's owner and founder, Nolan, began visiting more often. He had built the business from scratch and wasn't going to watch one of his strongest branches collapse. Nate used Nolan's visits to posture, pressuring the team to appear upbeat and efficient. But Nolan wasn't easily fooled. He sensed unease beneath the surface. After several visits, Nolan took action. He announced a full cleaning of the office. Everyone, including Nate, would receive a paid day off. Anyone who refused would still be paid. What no one knew was that Nolan used the opportunity to install hidden cameras, all connected to his personal computer. He wanted to see the truth behind the branch's decline. Every day, he monitored the office from open to close, studying the footage carefully. He took notes, piecing together the real story. Then one day, during a meeting, a detailed business development plan landed on his desk. He flipped through the pages, impressed by the clear graphs, the careful handwriting, the depth of thought. Looking up, he asked, "Nate, who prepared this?" Nate swallowed, then lowered his eyes with false modesty. "I worked very hard on it, sir." Several sleepless nights. "I hope you like it." But Nolan knew better. The neat, feminine handwriting wasn't Nate's. He had seen Nate's erratic scrawl on countless reports. Suspicion gnawed at him. Later, reviewing the recordings, he discovered the truth. Lauren, the quiet janitor, was the one behind the plan. Night after night, she stayed late, drafting charts and strategies with practiced ease. It was second nature to her, not some fluke. Nolan felt a pang of regret. He had overlooked her completely. The next morning, he summoned Nate. The manager strode in confidently but froze when he saw Nolan's expression. His shoulders sagged, his face drained of color as Nolan thundered, "Do you realize your arrogance nearly destroyed this branch? I've lost some of my best employees because of your behavior, and then you tried to pass off someone else's work as your own?" That was the last straw, Nate stammered, but Nolan cut him off. "I don't need excuses. You have 10 minutes. Pack your things and leave." The once proud manager shuffled away, humiliated. Nolan then turned to his secretary. "Bring in the cleaning lady." Moments later, Lauren stepped into the office quietly. Nolan gestured toward a chair. "Please sit down. I want to know more about you. Clearly, you're intelligent, and I can see you haven't always lived under hardship." Lauren, surprised, nodded. As she spoke softly, Nolan realized how wrong everyone had been. Deaf though she wasn't weak or broken. She looked out the window as she began to tell her story. Calm, steady, and far wiser than anyone in that office had imagined. Lauren grew up with very little, but from the start she loved learning. Home was chaotic. Her parents drank heavily, and their late-night fights rattled the walls, so she carved out a sanctuary of her own. Starting in 3rd grade all the way through graduation, she slipped away to an abandoned house near her building to study on the nights the shouting started. Before dawn, while everyone at home still slept, she'd sneak back, grab fresh clothes and her backpack, and hurry to school. Against the odds, she excelled. Teachers admired her grit and quick mind. Concepts clicked for her, and she gladly helped classmates who struggled. Getting into business school was easy. Thriving there was natural. She was the kind of student professors cite as an example. Disciplined, clear-thinking, generous with her time. No one was surprised when she graduated with the highest GPA. Business administration wasn't just a major, it was her calling. That's where she met her first love, Connor, a year ahead of her. The first time they crossed paths in the East hallway, something between them settled into place. His wealthy family, however, disapproved, especially the idea of their son marrying a brilliant woman who lacked money. The pushback didn't shake them. Their bond only deepened, and Connor proposed, promising he wanted a lifetime with her. A week before the wedding, they drove out of the city to visit friends at a country house. Spirits were high, everyone was already waiting. Then a dense fog rolled in, turning the world to white. They never saw the oncoming headlights until they flared across the windshield. Screeching brakes, a violent crash. When Lauren came to, she was in an ambulance. Her first question, "Is Connor okay?" When she learned he hadn't made it, she fainted. In the hospital, she knew something else had changed. Silence had swallowed the world. From that moment, she could not hear. The doctors couldn't explain it. They chalked it up to trauma. Even in shock, she begged to attend Connor's funeral to at least say goodbye at his grave. She was denied. Connor's parents blamed her for the trip, for the friends, for every decision. His mother, nearly lunging at Lauren, hissed, "I'll make her life miserable. A janitor job is the best she'll ever do. She'll cry for ruining my son." Lauren's only wish then was that she had died instead. She felt unwanted, unneeded, hollow. Back home, things deteriorated further. Her mother cycled through roommates and drinking sprees until during one bender, the apartment burned. Overnight, Lauren had no job, no home, no love, and no hearing. Employers weren't interested in a deaf, fragile young woman. Doors stayed closed, so she taught herself to read lips. She scraped together a few coins cleaning stalls at the local market and used the money to buy a cheap hearing aid. It didn't restore her hearing, but it caught fragments, a word here, a tone there. She drifted for a while and finally found a small shed for shelter. She didn't complain. She'd already seen enough unfairness to know complaints wouldn't change it. Instead, she filled the quiet with care, taking in strays no one wanted. Her pets became family, warm bodies against the cold loneliness. Winter brought a new worry. The abandoned building had no heat. When the cold cut through, she fretted more for the animals than for herself. Tiny paws curling against the chill, breath puffing in the air. She rationed blankets and food, doing what she could. When Lauren told this story, Nolan listened without interruption. He knew Connor's wealthy parents and felt the sting of their cruelty. That same day, recognizing the capable business graduate behind the quiet exterior, he offered Lauren the role of executive director for the branch. She accepted. The results were immediate. The branch stabilized, then grew. Nolan visited often, sometimes picking her up from work. People noticed. Soon everyone knew they were dating, and before long, word of their marriage spread through the company. One afternoon, after lunch, Nolan stopped by the branch with a gift. He knocked on Lauren's door. She was buried in work, as always. "Honey, take a break, will you?" "I brought you something," he said, stepping inside. In his hands was a certificate, the deed to an animal shelter, officially hers, where all of her rescues could live safely and comfortably. As she and Nolan settled into their new home and new routines, she wouldn't have the time to manage day-to-day pet care. Now she wouldn't have to worry. The shelter would handle it with love and structure. There was more to celebrate. Lauren was pregnant, expecting a baby boy. Nolan's joy was unguarded and full. And then came a miracle even the doctors couldn't explain. Lauren's hearing returned, sudden and complete, as if the silence had only been a long, terrible pause. Sound poured back into her life. Voices, footsteps in the hall, the wind against the trees outside their windows. She was whole again. The house Nolan owned, large, bright, once only a set of rooms, felt transformed. With Lauren's steadiness and warmth, it became a home. Lively dinners, quiet mornings, a nursery waiting in soft colors, the gentle order she always brought wherever she worked. What do you make of their journey and who they became? If you were in their place, what choices would you have made differently? Your reflections could help someone facing their own hard season. If this story resonated with you, feel free to like and subscribe for more and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for reading. See you soon.